Okay. All right, so let me get this straight. Langston Faizon Santacima, known as professionally Faizon Love, is against foundational Black Americans, ADOs, those that claim one or other, to have reparations. He literally said, F that, $223K. Because he says that the payment in cash is going to go right back to Cadillac and Mercedes-Benz. We got to talk about this. And I really want to do a live on this topic because I think this is so powerful and so deep. This conversation about non-Black, non-FBAs, non-ADO Blacks really talking against Black Americans having reparations. It's a dangerous move to make and a really evil conversation. I'm explaining to you after I read the article. Hey y'all, I'm back. I had to come back because this one I literally just happened on an hour ago, and baby, I'm gonna go all the way in. And it's a personal one, not just because of being FBA, but also having Cuban heritage as well. And I know some people feel some kind of way about us that have like the dual allegiance thing, but I'm gonna break it down and I'm gonna explain all of it. And I'm pissed off at Faizon because him being Cuban, Black Cuban at that, he know better. All right, so it reads from the Daily Mail, of all places. They broke this story of him being interviewed on VladTV. It says, after Faizon Love has lashed out at the notion that Black people in California will be given $223,000 of reparations, saying that the money will only be used to purchase luxury cars. Love, 54, made the eye-opening response in an interview with YouTube channel VladTV as the debate over reparations for slavery in the Golden State continues. The Media Man star said, F that. That's another trick bag because that money is gonna go right back to Cadillac, right back to Mercedes-Benz. The chair of the task force handling the reparations issue, Camila V. Moore, said in an interview Tuesday that the $223,000 figure being reported was not simply the amount of money that would be handed out, but represented the state of California's maximum culpability per person. She also criticized the fact that reparations only apply to any persons who faced housing discrimination between 1933 to 1972, not just Black people. In his interview, Love went on to offer an alternative to monetary reparations, suggesting that Black people should be tax exempt for life. The Cuban-born actor referred to slaves being treated as tax write-offs during the Civil War. He also brought up the fact that the federal income tax was initiated by the U.S. government in order to pay for the Civil War. The financial requirements of the war saw Congress place a flat 3% tax on all incomes over $800. Following the end of the war, the original law was repealed and not formally replaced until the 1913 Federal Income Tax Act. Love is known for his controversial remarks. In 2014 and 2015, he was criticized for his wide-ranging support of Bill Cosby in the wake of the dozen of sexual assault allegations levied at the elderly comedian. In one tweet, Love referred to Black people who believe the accusations as spineless monkeys. Okay. During this week's public hearings on reparations in Oakland City Hall, the notion of tax-exempt status was brought up. Carol Williams said that she lived through homelessness since moving to the Golden State in 1985 from Memphis and stated her belief that all reparations should be tax-free. She said, I consider myself a foundational Black American. The reparations should be tax-free so that when we get the money, the IRS won't come after us. I agree with that, 1,000%. And I'm asking that when we make the decision of lineage, we save those who have been in California since 2000. While an activist who spoke at the hearings, Dion Jenkins, said that money given to Black people in California should be in line with the average price of a home in the state, around $800,000. Dion is a hot mess, and I'm going to get to his ass too. Following that appearance at the public hearing in Oakland City Hall on Wednesday, Jenkins, who refers to himself as a hip-hop organizer with them dirty-ass dreads, that was a side comment, they didn't write that, said in an interview, either they're going to comply or it's going to be a serious backlash. Since 2021, the first of its kind in the nation task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans has been delving into history and studies to make its case for reparations to California descendants of enslaved black people. The group has until July 1st before they have to make a decision on reparations. Jenkins ran for president in 2016 and 2022 and ran for the U.S. Senate in California in 2022, gaining less than 7,000 votes. On his official website, Jenkins calls himself a grassroots hip-hop organizer. In his speech before the task force, Jenkins also said defense, money, land, grants. 4 elements of every society, every nation, and defensive structure, economy, land, and having access to that economy. He continued, if that is not being addressed, reparations will not hold. Reparations, repair, is the root word. We cannot have reparations if those elements are not addressed. Also speaking on Thursday was Reverend Tony Pierce of the Black Wall Street Project, who shouted as his time for speaking ran out. $230,000 is not enough. At Wednesday's hearing, the entrepreneur and the first black professional triathlete, Max Fennell, who said that every person should get $350,000 in compensation to close the racial wealth gap, and black-owned businesses should receive $250,000, which will help them flourish. Fennell added, it's a debt that's old. We're working for free. He said, we're not asking, we're telling you. He concluded his remarks by saying, the tangibles of what I'm asking for is $350,000 per black American in California. That's tangible. Small business grant, $250,000, and land grant, 15 to 20 acres. Fennell posted a video on Instagram showing him at the hearings with around 60 others, alongside the caption, witnessing history with the tribe. Meanwhile, Demless Johnson III, a Richmond City Council member, said, it's remarkable that the issue is even being talked about publicly. You have to name a problem in order to address it, he said. Of course, we want to see it addressed now. The urgency is now. But just have it all aired out and put on the line and is a major feat. Council member Carol Fife of Oakland pointed out the problems of homelessness in California. Fife said homelessness is off the charts in California. And that's part because they have been populations, particularly black Americans, who have been barred from access to housing. Members of the committee will make preliminary policy recommendations such as adults of government agencies that deal with child welfare and incarceration with the aim of reducing disparities in how black people are treated. Oh, Lord, this is a long one, child. Oh, this is long. Oh, but I'm almost okay. I'm almost finished, though. Okay. The group discussed how the state may address its impact on black families whose property was seized through eminent domain. The topic garnered renewed attention after lawmakers last year voted to return a beachfront property known as Bruce's Beach to descendants of the black residents who owned it until it was taken in the 20th century. Officials from Oakland, Sacramento, Los Angeles, and other California cities spoke about local reparation efforts. That included Kanza T. Jones Muhammad, vice chair of Los Angeles Reparations Advisory Commission, created last year under then Mayor Eric Garcetti. Yes, the goal of the commission is to advise the city on a pilot program for distributing reparations to a group of black residents, but it doesn't have a timeline set in stone for finishing its work. In September, economists started listing preliminary estates for what could be owed by the state as a result of discriminatory policies. But they said they need more data to come up with more complete figures. California Secretary of State Shirley Weber, former Assemblywoman, authored the bill that created the state's task force, and the group began its work last year. The bill was signed into law in September 2020 after a summer of nationwide protests against racism and police brutality, following the killing of George Floyd, a black man, by a white police officer in Minnesota. In June, the task force released a 500-page report describing discriminatory policies that drove housing segregation, criminal justice disparities, and other realities that harmed Black Californians in the decades since the abolition of slavery. Oh, that was a long one, but it was worth it. And now, I'm about to go all the way in. First of all, Mr. Faizon Love. Yes, I'm talking to you directly. See, you go to VladTV and you talk a good game. And most of the stuff that you talk about, I'm not going to lie, you do speak on like Black issues in a way where you don't come off as a coon a lot of times. I'm going to give you that. But on this case, you're wrong, okay? Do I think that you're malicious with it? 50-50. Let me explain. The Cadillac and Mercedes-Benz comments was foul because most Black people don't even buy Cadillac and Mercedes-Benz anymore. That group is old and gone, okay? You talking about a time period of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, okay? These people coming up, they into other type of cars. They into like Audis. They into other vehicles, you know, like all them like high end like European cars, all right? Cadillac, Mercedes-Benz, but particularly Cadillac, they ain't into Cadillacs, all right? So you made a comment that's really outdated. Second of all, you, my brother, and I could call you that because me and you share a little bit of a similar lineage, just like you. You're Cuban. You're Cuban, all Cuban. You're not a foundational Black American. You're not ADOS, okay? So you don't have the whole opportunity to really speak out against this type of movement, this type of change, this type of progress, this type of policy. If you're going to be an ally, that's cool, you know? If you're going to support, fine, whatever. But to come out and say, F that, 223K, especially when you're not eligible, it's a sign of hating. And it's also a sign of you really rock with us, but you don't really rock with us when it comes to financial advancement. Okay? Now, I'm going to go real deep in the rabbit hole of this. You see, you are in Hollywood, okay? When people talk about Black Hollywood, a lot of people think like, oh, you know, it's the Blacks in Hollywood that work in Hollywood. No. Black Hollywood is an actual real thing. It's actually physical. It's actually historical. It goes back all the way, believe it or not, to the 1920s and 30s, okay? When you had Black people working out in Hollywood, Hattie McDaniel, Dorothy Zandra's mother, and then Dorothy Zandra's and her sister. You had Bill Bojangles Robinson. You had, who else you had? Stephen Fetchit. Oh, God. I really don't want to mention him. But you had all these Black people that was in Hollywood. And a lot of them did comedy, like what you do, Faizon Love. And many of them looked out for all of them. And majority of them were FBAs, okay? Foundational Black Americans, you know, and what people call ADOS. They were that. And they had associations. They had alliances that they had to make with those Hollywood moguls, producers, directors to get work. And when Black people, regardless of whether they was from America, lineage-based, descendants of American chattel slavery, whether they came from the Caribbean, Latin America, they would basically like sponsor them. Like, okay, you know, I know you used to work in New York, you used to be on the Chitlin circuit, you used to work down south, you from so-and-so place. I'm going to basically, you know, put the word out for you to basically work in Hollywood. In order for these Black people to go through actual Hollywood, they had to go through Black Hollywood before they could be seen by white Hollywood, okay? And it was basically FBA actors, singers, total performance that was doing this, okay? Then you had the NAACP. Yes, we know a lot about them. A lot of people don't like them, but the faces of the NAACP, they were FBAs. They was like ADOS. So the reality is that you're able to converse with VladTV as a top tier black comedian because of the legacy that FBA actors, singers in Hollywood, and even directors, Oscar Michelle, you're sitting here basically based off that legacy, based off of people who, while they was in Hollywood, also had to deal with Jim Crow, had to deal with segregation, even in California, okay? They had to fight to basically get roles. They had to fight to be seen in her. When Hattie McDaniel won her Oscar, she's the only Oscar winner, believe it or not, whose parents were slaves. They were chattel slaves. That was a big win. She's the only one. And she was very big in Black Hollywood. Many people don't know. And she made it so that those that would come after her would have it much easier. And you're basically benefited from this. So when you're making a comment like F that 223K reparations, you're basically spitting on the children, the descendants of those all black Hollywood actors. Because guess what? They're going to be eligible for it. They're the ones that's actually mainly so eligible because they've lived in California for decades, if not practically centuries, okay? They've lived out west, and they had to deal with the harsh racism in California, because California got a whole different kind of racism than it is in New York, where I'm at, okay? So have respect and have class and understand the real history of what we have gone through and what they have gone through. And you're sitting there chopping it up with VladTV because you have benefited from the fight that not just they did in Black Hollywood, but also as a Black Cuban, you benefited from the fight of all Black Americans to be able to come here through what is known as the Hart Sellers Act, which was amended in 65, 67, so that non-white Europeans could come to this country just like the white counterparts who weren't from here, and be able to come here and enjoy the fruits, benefits, and labor of being an immigrant without having to be quota, like having to come here on a quota, which is like a limited amount that could come here like once a year or like a decade, because they were not letting non-Black immigrants in after 1920s. And a lot of that had to do with a lot of the politics that was going on during the Roaring 20s, Jazz Age, and then the Great Depression. So it was like we put in caps on a lot of stuff, and then a lot of foreign Blacks used to align with a lot of, FBAs and ADOS people, and they would just be like, nah, y'all getting a little bit too close. We can't get rid of them, but we could block y'all from coming. And that's what they did for 45 years. They did that, and they did it, unfortunately, they did it pretty good. But a lot of these people that are coming over here now, we're seeing that a lot of them are not our allies. Those that have come here, particularly post 1967, and definitely by the 80s. It's not a good look. But see, here's the problem I have too. VladTV, you a messy ass bitch, as always, because you always trying to pit people against each other, and you basically want to make it hard for Faizon Love to basically go out on stage, do comedy, because now people know he's not FBA. You fucking up his money too. But Faizon Love shouldn't have said that in the first place. Now, I'm about to deviate because Faizon Love is Cuban, okay? I'm a quarter Cuban. I've always been transparent about this, okay? And I've always said that because of me being a quarter Cuban, I should be eligible for 75% of reparations. Because my family, my lineage, for me, is 75% FBA. My mother was 100%. My father was 50%. Okay? I'm 75%. So I have more than my father, but I still don't have 100%. Faizon Love wouldn't be eligible. But here's the trick. Black Cubans that look like him, and I know this, were not coming over here. My family from Cuba was mulatto, mixed with Spanish, African, and Chinese, okay? So they were able to come in and blend. They could pass, they were like, oh, you're the same as a light-skinned Black person, a Creole, or hey, you could actually be white. Because my great-grandfather, who was my paternal grandmother's father, was able to achieve the gift of whiteness because he was a quarter Chinese. So they were able to let them in, but they would not let the black Cubans in at all. At all. For like 2-3 decades. They weren't letting them in because they did not want them to basically be alongside black Americans. They were not letting black Cubans in. They did before, but by like the 20s, they were not letting them in at all. So there's like a huge gap there. So it's like, Faizon, do you really understand the history of how you got here? And like you didn't get like an easy path. So that's what it is with that. So this guy, Dion, I think his name is Dion Hart. He's a messy bitch. And well, I'm going to get to him because he's been messing with a lot of people. He messed with Greg Marcel Dixon. He was talking about his sexuality. And Marcel don't talk about his sexuality, okay? He let it be known, I don't identify with LGBT. I'm not that. I don't identify as a gay man. I'm not that. But he has been, you know, on his old Twitter account, he has been with men in the past, but he basically doesn't live that life anymore. He doesn't live that life from what I've heard him say. He doesn't live the life. But this man, Dion, I believe his name is Dion Hart, disrespected him in the worst way. But, oh no, Dion Jenkins is his name. I apologize. But the thing is that Marcel stood up to him and said, you're just ignorant. You're ignorant. You're stupid because you don't even have a plan. And then he goes around on different Twitter spaces saying, if we don't get $800,000 and if they don't comply, it's going to be a serious backlash. You basically threaten the whole California task force. And that's probably why they decided we're not going to give them cash payments. We're going to give only reparations to those that experienced housing from 1933 to 1971. And it's not going to be just for black Americans. Basically, the Filipinos is going to get it. The Asians and more of them are going to get it. And then really the Mexicans and some of the blacks. In other words, Yvette Carnell, I'm going to come out and say it. She should have been on that task force. She should have been on that task force because it wouldn't have went down that way. It wouldn't have went down that way. We got to be realistic on a lot of stuff. It wouldn't have went down like that. It wouldn't have went down. But more importantly, this is a conversation that's never going to end. And we got to still, fight. And we got to call out those that speak against us because I'm learning something. Most of the people that are speaking out against reparations are not white. They're not white. Not saying they agree with it, but they got these black people that don't fuck with us really to want us to happen. Now, it was very interesting to end when Faizon Love said, I feel as though black Americans shouldn't have to pay taxes. And you know what Vlad said? I agree with that. You know why Vlad agreed with it? Because they wouldn't have to give us money. The whole thing is that they don't want us to have money. They don't want us to have wealth. They want us to be, as what Yvette says, a permanent bottom class, okay? And I'm not quoting Yvette to call her on some fangirl shit, but I'm quoting her because what she has said over the past 5 years is ringing true. It's basically like these people want us to be poor forever. And it's not a cool thing. And it shows that you're not a real ally, Faizon. We know where Vlad stands. But we didn't know you felt like that. Yeah. We didn't know you felt like that. But, I'm long-winded. So, I have to end it here. But I went in. And I'm going to go live about this next week because this is a hot mess. It's a hot mess. Oh, I got to do another commentary too tomorrow. It's a little bit late. It's later. But with that being said, I'm going to sign off. I'm probably going to, call it for tonight. I'll talk to y'all later. Subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't. Share, comment, like, and I'll be back later. Take care and have a good and safe weekend.